Welcome back to another episode of In the Mirror. Today we are going to be talking about the art of bullshitting. Hi, it's been a little bit. It looks like we have officially missed the mark on this week's episode because I have already decided that I have nothing planned. And to be honest, I was quickly going to beat myself up about the fact that I did not come prepared today. But then I remembered that it is indeed a skill to sit up here and yap to a microphone. And to be honest, isn't that just life? Because I think bullshitting often gets a lot of bad rep, some justifiably so. But I think there's this idea that people who bullshit are lazy, unprepared, and probably not ready for adulthood. But I do think that isn't that just a depiction of life anyways? Because how many times in life do we actually know what we're doing? Or are we just living and finding out what's right or wrong in that moment anyways? I think about this game. I don't know if anyone's ever played it. It's a card game called BS. And I guess I'll explain the rules because that's the only way you're going to understand this analogy. But basically, in BS, let's say there's 4 people playing. Each person gets the same amount of cards, which 52 divided by 4 would be 13, I think. Again, bullshitting as I speak. And it kind of goes in order, where first and foremost, there's aces. Now, player 1 says, I have 1 ace, and puts their card face down and slides it in the middle. And all the other players have to decide whether or not he's bluffing. If they do think that he is bluffing, they'll call it out. They'll say BS. And then that card will flip over, and if that card is right, it's actually an ace, then the person who called BS has to pick up the card. And if the card is wrong, then the person who did put down the card has to pick up all the cards. They could choose not to call anything and just let the cards go by. And I think the fun part about this game, obviously the goal being to get rid of all your cards, is that in a lot of ways, aside from maybe deceiving and manipulating other individuals to thinking that you have a specific card or not, I think the analogy is really apparent to life. Because a lot of the times, we don't know what we're doing, and we're just testing the waters and calling our own bluffs. I mean, even there are times where I think we intentionally cope and try to navigate it and go, to hell with it. We'll figure out what to do after the fact. So I think there's something to be said about coming in to things intentionally unprepared. Because I do think it helps us develop a different skill that isn't talked about enough, which is, and I don't know how scientifically it works, but I definitely think there's a different part of your brain that turns on when you're just talking and navigating what you already have in your head versus if you were to sit, think, and prep. Because 2 entirely different things, if you really think about it. If you are a planner, right, like if you're someone who sits down and really likes to over fine-tune things, which in truth, that's a lot of who I am at heart. I think naturally I like order, I like preparation, because I do think that it helps me articulate my words better, if that makes sense. I think when I can prep my words, which is why I think wanting to do things in the creative arts and whatnot feels very natural to me, because that is a space I'm super comfortable in. I feel like if I have time to make stuff good, I can find the right words and descriptions to portray what it is that I'm trying to express. But I do think there's something to be said about the other end, which I guess this goes into like my improv acting roots, where you don't have to know everything. And people kind of just want to hear you for who you are. And the more prepared you are, in some ways, is a less authentic version of yourself. I think of, I almost said Millie Bobby Brown, but that is definitely not her name. What's her name? Bobby Altoff, the podcast girl who like popped up out of nowhere and people call an industry plant. And obviously, having been in the content space for a little bit, I definitely know that She is nowhere near an industry plant because what does that even mean? But I do think there's something to be said about how she popped off. Because I don't know if everyone knows the background lore of Bobby Altov, but um, obviously I think she's mentioned in a couple podcasts. She grew up poor. Her entire um, her entire justification for starting the life that she ended up living, doing content and podcasting and whatnot, is rooted in the fact that she wanted to make money to provide a lifestyle for her friends and her family that she, at the time, probably was working at like a Sonic or something, if I remember correctly. And she started doing TikToks. And on TikTok, she went viral for like momming. Is that the word? Is that the right tense? Like when you are mothering. Okay, I feel like I'm describing this wrong. Like like what's it called? Like mom child content, but like without the child, just like how to be a mother, I guess. And she got some traction that way, but obviously like incredibly tight niche, right? And I think through her experience doing that, and I know she made like decent money doing that, she realized that in her planning her content, it was actually really difficult for her to navigate the content world in the way she wanted to. So when she thought about the idea of podcasting, she actually approached it really smart. Why would I put in more effort, right? Why would I put in more effort to be a version of myself that is so polished when I can just come into every interview having done zero research? In fact, it is simply a conversation between me and someone with some notoriety. I think one of her first episodes being Drake and Mark Cuban and whatnot. And she genuinely does not come into this interview with any material. And people, I think, initially questioned her style. Like, why would you do this? Why would you come into an interview, podcast, whatever you want to call it, unprepared, have zero notes, ask people questions like, what do you like for breakfast? And what do you do on your free time? How are the kids, I guess? Like, why would you think that's entertaining? Pretty much. And her response to this entire debacle is, why would I stress myself out more when I can just be the most authentic version of myself on camera and have real, honest conversations with people and not feel like I have to study and know every single detail about someone, because that in itself portrays something a lot more inauthentic. And it got me really thinking, because that is proof that bullshitting works. I mean, even if you think about it in the general context, I don't know if you've seen like those terrible Instagram ads where people pretend to be like education gurus and sit there and talk about how I can teach you how to refinance your home or teach you XYZ about social media so that you can make hundreds of thousands of dollars. Like, try these tips because this is what's going to make it work. I like respect that so much today, where maybe like the version of myself like 15 years ago, 15's a stretch, maybe 5 years ago, initially judged people who went on the internet and did that. And in some ways, like, I think it's fair judgment, because how are you going to be an education guru and not know what you're talking about, right? I think this is no dog at anyone in particular, or what I guess I'm trying to say is this is no, um, I am saying that I am not going to name this person. But there was this person that I kind of knew in, um, like passing, like not really knew, but knew of. And they were doing like film education content, right? And obviously, I had been working in film for like 10 years, 8 years at this point, maybe a little bit less. And they started making these like mix between educational videos about how they secured like $3,000 clients to posting videos of how to's. And I would have just watched this and go, you're spreading misinformation. Like, is this the COVID pandemic era again? Because why are we lying to people about certain things? Like, is this voter fraud? Like, what's going on? And in the back of my mind, I felt like I was justified because, obviously I've been working in the industry for so long, and the things that they were teaching I felt were incredibly wrong, to be honest. Like, I do think there's some line of truth to any form of creativity in some way. I think over time, I ended up respecting what they did more because I understood that it wasn't a decision to spread things that they knew nothing about, but just what they felt in their experience made sense. And it really is the truth behind doing stuff and bullshitting your way through it. Now, I think about this a lot because it's very easy to get into perfectionist mindset. Like, we are so fascinated by wanting to be the best version of ourselves, which I think is a great thing, that sometimes we don't allow ourselves to live in a state of neutral or just existing and being, right? Like, we feel like the version of that we feel like the version of ourselves that needs to be portrayed in front of a camera or a lens, or even in this case, public eye, right? So not even talking social media. I just think like people we meet for the first time, first impressions, right? That we need to be on our A game. And it might not be like intentionally done where we feel like we have to do it, but we just naturally do it. And I don't know what the cause is. Maybe it's a little bit of like social media influence into daily life where we feel like how we have to put on that act. Perhaps it's a little bit of um, like corporate livelihood of wanting people to care so you don't lose your job, you know? But I think it is fascinating that we are scared to exist in our worst conditions or even our like not best conditions, right? But I think in some ways that is what people crave, to not be perfect, you know? And for the last couple episodes of this podcast, I've actually, I guess on a back end note, I've edited a lot of the material. I think for almost every episode I've chopped my ums and likes and the like those filler words that you hate yourself saying because you realize it's ongoing in between conversation and it ruins the flow of dialogue. So I have this bad habit of saying like in a sentence and um or from a I guess public speaking voice. You don't want to sound or hear that when you're talking. So naturally, because we have the editing tools at our disposable, I can't talk, disposal. I just want to chop those little bits and pieces out of this podcast naturally because I want it to flow. I want someone listening to it on Spotify wondering why can't this guy talk properly? He's said and like every 5 seconds. Like, get it out, bro. But maybe for this episode, I just try something new and I just leave everything in here. I say this now, but I think I'm going to end up editing some bits and pieces. I'll chop out the parts that don't matter, where I completely stutter, but I'll keep in all the transitional dialogue. How about that? And I think the reason I bring this up is I want to remind people that being the most authentic version of yourself, I guess in this case, the bullshitting version of yourself, is okay. You don't have to come in extra prepared. Like there's no need to do the extra mile just yet. I don't think it's a bad thing to, but I think it's okay to just exist first. This brings me to like, I hate to make everything about work, but I feel like it's half of my personality, and I hope someone out there relates as well so I don't feel like I'm crazy. But when I started streaming, and I think for those of you who have watched my streams, you may know this as well, I am Mr. like, make content. Like, for example, if I had to compare myself to another streamer in the space, I feel like I am the Ludwig of small streamers. Like, I like to make events, and I like to put things together, and I like to plan, and I like to make graphics, and I like to add production to things, even if I don't have a budget, right? And while all those things are really great to do, because I do think there's an element of added, like, oh, he cares about his work. And it is true. I do care a lot about my craft. I don't think it's feasible to always be on. And I used to think that I had that ability because I did film and I did all this other stuff. I felt like I always could be on. And then over time, I realized that the more polished I was, the more miserable I became because it felt like I needed to be my best all the time in order to reap some reward, or even let alone the reward end, feel like I was someone, you know? And it kind of it dragged me apart in the streaming space because I felt like I committed a lot of effort into making some of the best content that I had ever made because I felt like that was my competitive advantage, right? Not to make everything about competition, but sometimes you have to value what your skill set is and what your capabilities are. And, to me, I felt like that is what's going to make me feel different in the space, is to be the version of myself that I don't think anyone else can match, right? Like, I don't think a lot of people can make films on stream. I was making films for a while. And while I think all of that is great, what sucks about all that is then people get this version of you that is existing in front of the camera and making all of these things happen, but it's just not like you in your raw state. And in some ways, then you feel a little bit more miserable when you have a day where you aren't on your A game, where you don't have a dialogue of a script, like I don't like for every podcast I've done already, I haven't had a script and I've enjoyed it a lot more because I feel like I don't have to go through talking points a ton. I like to make like a checklist a little bit of maybe things I want to mention, but if I miss it, I miss it, and that's okay. And I use this to hopefully encourage other people to just show up, because I think showing up, even if you're a little delayed and you drop a podcast episode on a Saturday at night instead of on Friday, like you said you initially were, is better than not showing up at all. And it's very easy to end up reverting back to the version of yourself where you're just, dang, I lost my train of thought. See, this is what I mean. It's okay to lose your train of thought in sentences. I feel like that's completely normal, right? Like that's part of bullshitting. You're just sitting here and you're yapping, you're figuring it out. And hopefully you all are figuring it out with me. Maybe you could read my head thoughts. You tell me what I was saying. Like, yeah, try that. How about that? You tell me what I was going to say, and then in about 5 seconds, I'll count to five, and then you'll tell me what I was thinking of, and we'll see. We'll see if we're on the same page. Ready? 1, 2, 3, 4, 4.5. Did you figure out your thought yet? God damn it. See, this is what I mean. Bullshitting in itself is also quite scary. And maybe people won't agree with me because, I mean, how am I supposed to tell everyone that you should prepare? Because I do think that that's also unfeasible, right? I do think it's a balancing act. I wish that in life, people also just weren't so go with the flow. And maybe that's a hot take. I don't know. I feel like I've been on both ends of the coin. I used to be like over planner, and then over time I kind of mellowed out and feel like I need to live life a little bit more and have let life kind of take its course. But I do think there's something to be said about not letting life take its course and acting on your own, like, I can't even say intuition, but acting on the things that you know and you want and you wish, and doing it in a way that makes you feel poised, because there's something to be said about the validation of knowing that you know what the fuck you're doing. And I don't think that bullshitting in itself, at its core, gives you that. I do think over time, when you bullshit enough, you just tend to believe what you say. What's the saying that people say? Like, if you do something enough times, or if you say something enough, like, I don't think your brain actually understands the difference between the two. I think this context is often brought up in like love or like emotional connection. I think that's why the movie Her with I almost said Jean-Claude Van Damme for some reason, and that's so irrelevant to that movie. Joaquin Phoenix. Wow, holy! I need to touch back up my actor knowledge. That's a crazy tangent of a actor difference. Anyways, that's why that kind of movie is actually incredibly relatable because you don't actually need to experience the things to experience the things. If you tell your brain something enough, you can kind of just feel the same things and not know the difference. Our brain can't decipher whether or not that it can't decipher whether or not you experience something. Also, fun fact, side tangent. Oh my god, ADHD is going crazy, but related to this, I swear. That's why whenever you're craving something, like let's say you're craving candy and you're on a diet, or you want some soda, but you haven't had a soda in forever and you don't want to break it now, one of the best things you should do for yourself, and I was going to say I read this in a book, but I think actually one of my cousins told me this and it kind of just stuck with me, is if you want something, but you know that you have no control, no self-discipline in order to not grab the item, gummy bears and sour candies, because that is what I just demolished a bag of, and we're not going to talk about it any more than how we're talking about it today. I promise I will actually get on the advice that I had just mentioned as soon as this podcast is over. But let's say you're craving sour candy and you see it in a Kroger and it is looking at you like it is staring deep in your soul. You see it lock eyes as if this is your first love. Okay? You grab her. That's right. You grab her by her hands. You hold her. You hold her tight. You kiss the Haribo Bears candy. Don't kiss it. That's weird because you're in public. But you hold her tight. And after you hold her, you put her down. And I think you probably think that I'm crazy right now, but I have genuinely done this in public before, and it works every time. I think our brain can't distinguish the dopamine of wanting something, like wanting whatever it is, whether it's attention or food or dessert or, whatever the case may be. If you hold it in your hand, it is enough dopamine for your brain to tell yourself that I've experienced it. Now, I can't remember why I brought this topic up because that was 3 minutes ago, but I want you to take the advice that I just shared and run with it because I feel like it's good advice. Now, back to the actual topic at hand. When is bullshitting too far? At what point is feeding your own delusions something that is unrealistic? And to be honest, I don't know if there's a right answer to this because I do think that some of the most successful people are delusional. But I do also think that some of the most happy and true people, like true happiness, like genuine, raw bliss, are people who also accept reality. So I think this is where this funny line is between at what point do we have to cut out the delusion and be more logical and less radical, I guess. Just throwing words out there at this point. I don't know. Is that a synonym? Who knows? And I couldn't really tell you when that time is or at what point you cut out the lies that we tell ourselves or the act of pretending, because you kind of have to in some ways to live a part of your life, right? Like let's say, especially in your career, if you want to be a musician in 2025 like I do right now, I'd be crazy and incredibly illogical if I actually sat there and said, "Oh, I'm going to become a musician and tour." That's the level of expectation that I have for my music career. And people might look at me like, music career? Come on, be a little bit more logical. Like, you're not Michael Jackson. Dude, you're not even Charlie Puth. Let alone, you're not even Will Ferrell. So at what point do you think that you're gonna make this a life, right? And to all of those things, I say we all start somewhere, right? Like in order to have even remotely any of the things that you dream of, you have to be delusional enough to chase it. But then the other side of the coin is in chasing these delusional dreams that you have, there are going to be times that rip you apart. And you are going to be heartbroken more times than you can actually count. And all those dreams might feel out of reach the more times you rationalize the reality that you're facing. I think there's some fact out there that content creators make, and I can't remember what the number is. I want to say 90%. Someone fact check me because I'm not here to spit fact. I'm just going to say it's an opinion for right now. But I think the fact out there is that 90% of content creators make under 15K a year. Do you know how little that is? Like, that is not livable. And half of those people probably live in LA. That's like a month's rent. Okay, that's a stretch. Like a year's rent. How are they going to eat? Like, with what money are they going to buy food? Shoot, you're going grocery shopping every day. My God, you're starving meals. Like, oh my God, anorexic is coming. Okay? I joke, kinda, somewhat, not really. But that's what I mean, right? Is there's a cost to being delusional. The same way there's a cost to being rational. And that is the line of bullshit. That is why it's called an art. Because I don't think everyone can do it. You can bullshit, but not everyone can do it properly. Some people do it as cope, and some people do it as drive. And those are two different, distinct qualities, right? To do it to cope with things that you're actually experiencing is just a justification for why you feel it's not capable or why you actually don't resonate at all. You're not even telling yourself things that you want to believe. You're telling yourself things to make yourself feel better. But to tell yourself things that you actually believe, I think if you're going to live in that state, that's what you need to get to, right? Is that kind of delusion. I mean, in some ways, I'm trying to chase back that art of bullshitting because in the last year, I feel like I've gotten really, really rational, and I've always been incredibly rational. I think in some ways, that's what makes people good. Like I can't even say businessmen, but like I think it is important to be a little bit rational because that's how you make decisions, right? But you don't want to be too much where you're making decisions solely on results because that really is what being rational is seeing whether it's a metric or whether it's physically witnessing it yourself and you're making the justification of how you feel based off of that. Like you're letting that determine everything. And you don't want to do that because sometimes it's not in the things that are shown, but are in the things that are hidden, right? Like, how do you know? Let's say you decide to open a pizzeria shop. I don't know why I went with pizzeria. I think I'm craving pizza, maybe pepperoni or whatnot. Also relevant. That's also a lie too. I think Meat Lovers is probably my favorite pizza. That's also another lie. Sorry, I think Supreme. Pineapples on pizza, terrible. Sorry, had to say it. Um, or I'll eat it, but it's not. I wouldn't order. Um, but let's say you decide to open a pizzeria, and in the pizzeria, right, you are not making sales. Like you just started it up. You're a year in, and you are net zero. You're not making money. You're not losing a ton of money, but you're definitely not making money. Like every single month is zip. And at this point, you're like, I gotta let go of some of these employees. It's just costing too much. So you decide to let some go. And you're still at net zero. And you're wondering, do I quit now while I'm ahead? Or like, what's the case? And your immediate thought is, yeah, we're not making money. We're a year in at fire employees and I'm still not making money. Yeah, like let's just call it quits. But what you're not looking at is the fact that you live in a place that is expensive in rent and also um, is a place where people just don't want pizza. You're in like, I don't know, K-Town or something and people want to eat Korean food. They don't go to you for pizza. They go to, you know, the block down the street for pizza because they offer more variety. There's other facets and other factors that you're not looking at on why you're not making money. And so you made the decision to end it all when if you, with some sacrifice, obviously, decided maybe we'll shut down this store, but open it up somewhere else with a smarter decision, maybe it would have worked out. Delusional enough to still keep trying, not delusional enough to not recognize the results of what has already occurred. And that's the balancing act, right? The bullshitting is bullshit, results. Is this going to work? Can I still be delusional? Now, I guess it's important that we both share some of our delusions, our bullshitting, if you will. Okay. Take some time with me. Okay. I don't know how much time you have, but let's just take a second together to bullshit conjunctively. Is that the right word? Cohesively? Whatever the word is to mean together. Let's do it. Sit down. Okay. I want you to think of something that you want in this very moment. And please do not say for your loved one to propose to you, because I cannot control that and I don't want to break up any relationships today, please. But if it's anything else other than those, think about your craziest delusion. Okay? I'll share mine, then you share yours in the comments. Also, leave a like and share the video because this podcast needs some love. My current craziest delusion is that I am going to make it in my career so bad, like so hard and on a top tier level, and still be able to have all the factors of my life that are like my privacy, my love life, I guess if I want to be a father, all those things, also be the best version of myself in those at the same time as being one of, if not the best in my career path as well. And in this regard, I'm saying career path, it's probably to be a content creator and also a successful musician, live performer, singer, whatever you want to call it. I do want to experience live performance again. Maybe not crazy big dreams, but I'd say big dreams nevertheless, right? Like maybe I even need to dream a little bit bigger. Let's be more delusional, right? I want to win a Grammy. Yeah, that's right. I said it. I want to win a Grammy. And here comes the judgment. You better not be one of them. But now I want you to think, and I hope you've taken some time to think for yourself what your craziest delusion is. And I want you to think of the ways that you can bullshit to get to the things that you're wanting to chase. So let's say you want not a ring, but let's say you want to lose 50 pounds in a month, which you're like, that's not possible. I haven't lost more than 5 pounds a month. Shoot, I would typically gain weight in a month, right? Especially with November and December coming up, like Thanksgiving, Christmas is GG's, man. You're gaining weight for sure. But let's say that's your goal, to lose 50 pounds in a month. And your craziest bullshit answer in order to do that is what? I need to work out every single day. I need to run 3 miles every single day, do a ton of cardio, no days off. If I have any days off, I am missing the mark. And I need to do these things in order to reach my goal. I need to eat this amount of calories. I need to really consider not splurging on items that are going to make me feel like I'm throwing sugar into my system. And that is what's going to get me to lose 50 pounds by a month. Maybe even you say, I decide I'm going to not participate in Thanksgiving. I am thankful for my family, but today we are not giving our food any love. Let's say you make that decision. And then you keep saying it. You tell yourself you're going to not do these things again. You keep saying it. And then what ends up happening is you end up doing it. Voila. Magic. Hoo-hoo. I'm trying to think of a word that showcases like, wow, you did it. That's all it takes to turn delusion into action in order to achieve the things you want to achieve. Am I crazy for saying that? I feel like I broke down like the secret to life a little bit. Partial secret to life, I guess. But it is true. You just turn delusion into action and then you get to where you want to get to. So for me, if I want to end up winning a Grammy, let's talk about my delusions and I want to be a successful content creator, what's the first thing I need to do? I need to make content. Someone starts shitting on me now. I haven't made enough content. I've been slow. Overthinking it. You're being perfectionist. Get on your shit, Sguy. I know. I need to make content. And then if I want to be a successful musician, I need to make a ton of music. Yeah, good music, but good can come over time. Let's make a ton of music first and figure out what's good and what's bad. And then we go from there. Let's make a ton of music. Let's get better at our craft. Let's continue to make a song a day. Let's write every single day so that we are in a position where we feel like over time we get more confident with our work. Let's throw shit at the wall and see what fucking sticks. Because there's going to be some shit that sticks on the wall because diarrhea is going to stick. No Pepto-Bismol, okay? That's what we kind of need to do, right? In order to live in both sides of the coin. Because otherwise, you're just saying stuff to cope. You're not there to change anything. You're just saying it, right? The only way that you find that balance is if there's action. If there's no action, there's nothing. And so I guess I say all this to say, what the hell does the art of bullshitting even mean? Because I think people look at that and, like I was saying before, people have all these assumptions about what that actually stands for or what that actually represents. But let me break it down to you in like 5 words. Okay, that's a little bit of a stretch. Let me break it down to you in a sentence. The art of bullshitting is the art of actions. It really, like, I feel like it's pretty simple. The art of bullshitting is the art of actions. You tell yourself something until you start to believe it, and when you start to believe it, you start to do it. And I think the best bullshitters are some of the most successful people today. And you can define success however you want, right? But I guess in terms of actually doing stuff, like putting pen to paper, I think those are some of the best people, right? And I know there's this debate about like what's more important, actions or words. I think they're both important, right? You can't have actions until you start saying things to believe in that anyways. So it's kind of a two-sided coin. Like you gotta put words out there to start to believe it, and then when you start to believe, you start to do it. And bullshitting in itself, if we're talking about it in a deceitful manner, right? If we're talking about it in the form of a context of a game, we're talking about poker, we're talking about the game of BS. Your job and the art of bullshit and the art of poker is to do something so hard, not so that you're lying. The goal is not to lie. I think that's the the false end of the stick that people think poker is all about, right? People think that people have to have their poker faces on and wear sunglasses and wear these weird visors to lie to people at the table. That's not what they're doing. The goal of poker, if you're really a good player, and I say this as I am a poker student, looking forward to hopefully playing in a poker tournament one day. Actually, I'll speak that into existence. Please, celebrity poker tournament or whatever it's called, please invite me. I've been wanting to be on there so bad, but let me pop off somewhere first. Maybe my music pops off, or like, I don't know. Maybe my streams start popping off again. I don't know. But I think the true test of whether or not you're good at poker is when you start to believe your bluff. You don't just bluff because you feel like, oh, I need to lie in order to get this person to think that I have something like this. The goal of it is to say, you know, I have a, I have a, oh my God, I can't talk. I have 2 cards. One of the cards being a 10 and the other one being a king. The table comes out and we got a pair of 10s and nothing else. And obviously, that's great, but it's not amazing. But you realized, you run the odds in your head and you go, well, in this situation, it's probably best to bluff because I still have a situation where I could end up with a turn on the end that hits king because the king hasn't come up on the board and there's several people already out of the game. And if they're out, that means there's a justification that they probably didn't have anything to begin with. So if I know that I at least have a 10 pair and I don't have a king pair just yet, what are the chances they have an ace? Because that would be the only pair that they'd have higher than me based off the table anyway. So I'll take my chances and still play the game because I think that even if they have a jack pair or a queen pair, if a king pair hits, maybe I could still stay in the game because I have a 10 pair anyway. So call a bluff because you see an ace on the table, but you know that if you hit 2 pair, you're still better off than their 1 ace pair. So you say, yeah, king pair is going to come out. Now, all of the things I just said right there is not poker advice. In fact, I would not encourage you to take the words that I just said to play a table at Vegas because if you end up losing like 5K, 10K, I don't want you to blame me. You know what I mean? Please. But, that's part of bullshitting is believing your shit. BS does not stand for bullshit. It stands for believing your shit. You believe your shit until you feel like you can't believe your shit anymore. Then you move on to something else you can believe your shit with. And that is the podcast for today. Dan did pretty good. No script, no nothing. Came into here unprepared as hell. Hopefully I get like a 20-minute podcast out of this. If not, something was wrong and I need to re-record. No, I want to eventually end up doing longer podcasts. Hopefully, surely, at some point soon. But I want people to just get used to these 20-minute sound bites first because, like, who's going to watch a 1-hour thing of me yapping if they're not going to watch a 20-minute thing of me yapping? So this is going to be the most, like, raw, uncut form. Hopefully y'all like this format a little bit more where I'm, like, editing a little bit less, I feel like it will showcase my personality a little bit better and for you to all know that I'm really not trying to script these and like break it down a ton. I just want to be myself on camera. And I think that's the hardest part about content in general is existing and showing you without judgment of other people. I just want people to like what they see and have it be me. And that's really what the podcast is all about. So cheers to authenticity. Cheers to continuing to bullshit our way through life, and hopefully we can talk about it and share with each other in the comments and talk more about our own personal experiences because I want to know what you all are bullshitting about in your current moment. I mean, aside from my career, let me just talk about it real quick before we wrap up the podcast for the day. I am bullshitting my life through my love life. I don't know what the fuck I want right now. I'm on dating apps. That's right. You heard me. And I'm just saying fuck it and find out. But I'm sitting here coping and saying, you know what, like, I gotta put some energy into it. If I bullshit enough and say, you know what, I'm gonna keep putting energy into it, I'll eventually believe that I do care enough to put energy into it. That made no sense. I'm so sorry. Yeah, I mean, I think the big takeaway from all of this is life is crazy and hectic. And if we sit here and overcomplicate it and feel like we can't just exist sometimes, we're going to beat ourselves until we're a dead horse. And I want to give a big shout out to Twin because I feel like I didn't really learn this lesson until the last couple of years. And for those of you who don't know, I say Twin because KP streams on Twitch and I met Twin on Twitch. And one of the things that I think she always kind of reminds me about is like, sometimes you don't have to live, even though living is great. Like, it's okay to exist a little bit and just be there, be in the moment, do whatever, bullshit your way through it until you figure it out. But that's not to say that you also shouldn't live your life and make decisions to whether it's to better yourself or whatever the case may be, just do things that make you feel the most version of you that you can. But give yourself the grace to just not feel like you have to show up at 100% either. Because this, in some ways, is this in some ways is more than 100%, this like relationship to be yourself. And to me, that is what this podcast is all about. I wouldn't have wanted to start a podcast if I can't just sit up here and yap. Like that is what In the Mirror is about. I'm sitting here talking to a fucking mirror, talking to myself on camera. Like it's not that deep. I'm not doing some form of educational podcast where I'm telling people how to live their life. That's not what we're doing. We're just talking about our own life and to be able to share my own head thoughts about that. So how are people going to criticize when you're just talking to yourself? I mean, I guess you can criticize a little bit. You're talking to your fucking self. It's a little weird, but more people should do it. Anyways, that wraps up the podcast for the day. Please consider liking, subscribing, commenting your own personal experience. I'd love to hear what you all have to say. New episodes every Friday or Saturday. Yeah, I'll see you all next week, and we'll have a longer one next week. I think we're starting September soon, so I want to come out with a bang. Hopefully, it's something strong. Also, you can catch me live on twitch.tv/Sguy, and I'm back streaming here and there. Slowly but surely, I'm trying not to put too much pressure on it. Back to what we were talking about. Sometimes you can just bullshit your way through and just exist. It's not that big of a deal. Yeah, I'm posting schedules all the time in the Discord, so if you aren't already on the Discord, join it. Also, you can subscribe to the Sky Live YouTube channel. It's probably attached to this channel somewhere, so go find it if you really care to. All right, cool. I'll leave y'all to it. I'm going to continue bullshitting my way through life and pretending like I don't have laundry to do. All right, peace.